Hey, welcome and congratulations. You're about to write a speech roasting somebody. That's what we're going to talk about, how to write a roast speech. Yeah, that's not meat. We're talking about ripping somebody to shreds. And maybe that's what you're worried about. You're thinking, I don't want to cross the line. I don't want to offend this person, but equally, I don't want it to fall flat. That's part of the challenge of being a roaster. Now, candidly, I haven't done an actual roast speech where I've stood up in front of people on a dais and had to roast somebody who's sitting next to me. I haven't done that, to be candid. However, I've roasted a lot of people through my speeches that I've given through the years, because there's always someone in the audience everyone knows, and there's always the CEO of the company that you can roast a little bit. There's little important pieces to this that make it so that you're not crossing the line, that you're keeping it respectful, but that you're also getting the laugh and at the same time honoring the person. You see, that's really what a roast is about, is leaning into their signature moves, what they're known for, and equally saying, we love you, but we have to rib you a little bit. And so my name is Jason Hewlett. I'm a Hall of Fame speaker. I'm excited for you to get to learn how to be the person who does an effective roast. And whether it's in a roast setting or just ribbing and joking a little bit with somebody while you're on stage, this will help you in all of those capacities. Give about 5 to 10 very cool techniques, ideas, and takeaways from this video. Let's jump in. So first of all, what is a roast? A roast is just where you're playfully jabbing and joking about somebody. A lot of these roasts, unfortunately, lean into something that gets a little bit too dark. And so I want you to know that where I'm coming from on this video itself, it's probably not going to help you very much if you're looking to go into that space of really hurting someone's feelings or making them feel really bad about themselves. This is more about a positive jab at somebody or playfully joking with somebody in front of everyone in a sense that will make them feel better, even though it makes them laugh and everyone in the audience can be familiar with it. That's what this whole angle that I'm coming from is. There are roasts that have been done for years, and roasting has been a real way of saying to somebody, we honor you, we think you're great, but we have to tear you apart a little bit because you're so high up on the horse. You're so accomplished. And so that's where a lot of roasts come from. What I'd like you to check out if you've never seen a roast, or if you've only seen the ones of recent, and we'll talk about those in a moment. But the most famous roasts of all time, you can find them online. These are the Dean Martin roasts. And these are so awesome because these were some of the most famous people in the world at the time. From Frank Sinatra to Sammy Davis Jr. Dean Martin especially, he was the host of all of these, but they had people like Bob Hope and Jack Benny and Lucille Ball and all of these just famous, amazing actors, singers, entertainers who would stand up and roast people. In fact, they even had athletes like Muhammad Ali, and that's where people like Billy Crystal was essentially cemented as a legend because he did a perfect impersonation of Muhammad Ali, and then he became beloved for that. And so go check out the Dean Martin roast. There's some of the best videos you'll ever see on how to do a roast well. And then there's the Comedy Central roasts. That would be more of the present day. These you need to really just be careful. Watch them without the kids around, I would say. And then if you watch some Comedy Central ones, you'll see that they really go from, well, if we're talking Dean Martin and then to Comedy Central, that's a big gap. In other words, those Comedy Central ones are pretty much hurting people's feelings at that point. And the audience, the point of the roaster is to try to get the audience to scream and gasp. And that's unfortunate as to where that's gone. What's taking it to a whole new level is Netflix. Netflix has just released a new roast about Tom Brady. Tom Brady's the winningest quarterback and football player in NFL history. And for whatever reason, he agreed to be roasted by a bunch of people over a 3-hour period. Now, what happened with this roast was it was very good. It was also extremely inappropriate for kids to listen to, or, you know, anyone that's sensitive to strong language. And so I'd be careful when you watch it. However, I want you to know that across the board of all of these types of roasts that I've talked about through the last 50 or 60 years, the truth of it is the greatest roaster of all time is a guy named Don Rickles. Now, Don Rickles even has a name that sounds like he would roast people. Don Rickles was famous for getting on The Tonight Show for going on the Dean Martin celebrity roast, for really, until he passed away, he was considered the greatest person that could roast anyone because he did it fast, he did it effectively, but he never did it in a mean-spirited way. Now, there are very few people that can pull this off. Most of the time it feels like it's either not strong enough of a roast or it's too much. And so there are two people that have come pretty darn close to being the Don Rickles of our time, and those people today are Nikki Glazer and Jeff Ross. So Nikki is a genius. She practices roasting and she takes it to the comedy club first. So I'd recommend if you have a chance to go to a club and try some of your material out, that's a smart thing. That's what Nikki does. That's why she always is the best roaster. Jeff Ross is the other one who's really considered the host of a lot of these roasts, and he's excellent as well. He doesn't cross the line a majority of the time. He doesn't use truly offensive language, but a lot of these roasters do nowadays. So just be careful as you research them. So the key roles of roasting, I would just like to reemphasize. Humor, yes. Going over the line, not necessary. So you can poke and jab and make little funny remarks, but equally it doesn't have to be something that hurts someone's feelings permanently. In fact, Tom Brady, after the Netflix roast, which if you decide to watch it, you'll get a lot of laughs for sure, but he said afterwards, I regret having that roast done because the roasters attacked his ex-wife, his family, some other personal things. So he says, I regret being roasted because my kids heard about it. So you have to consider the fact that as somebody who's doing the roasting, make sure not to make it so that someone regrets having you be a part of that. Next, I'd say just be absolutely prepared. Research your subject, know what they're about. Know the humor that the audience expects, but also know some of the funny things that the person has done or the dumb things. That's part of a roast. Making fun of what they're incapable of or what they're do way too much of. That's a fun part of it. So researching is really one of the best parts of doing the roast. One of the things you want to look for is a recurring personality pieces that people have in their lives. I call this a signature move. So if they wear a certain type of style or a hat or their hair or they've changed their weight, these types of things are all essentially fair game depending on the roast. But then understand the boundaries. I mean, you need to be able to set some limits, and hopefully the person hosting is setting limits and boundaries for us to not cross as we roast. But making sure that you're going into it saying, this is the boundary I'm not going to cross, and so I'm going to stay within these lanes. That's a really important piece of a roast. What I'd say with writing the roast, you want to have actual structure, not just stand up and do jab, 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 jab. You want to do like an intro piece that can be obviously funny and sets things up, but then a body could be like a story, and it could just be a nice thing with a real good punchline. You always want to end though on a piece that's uplifting. That's the problem with a lot of the roasts that I've seen of late. They jab, 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 and then they leave. They don't say anything truly complimentary about the person they're roasting. And the whole reason the person's being roasted in general is because they're so accomplished and they've done a lot of good in their life. And so make sure that you're not just jab, jab, jab without a good ending. Always end in an uplifting way. So there could be some things where you exaggerate a point. You could do a callback from what somebody else has said and then add to it. You could also work on some new punchlines, some new ideas. You could even Google good roast jokes, and if you want, you can type in clean, or you can also say good dad jokes. The thing about Googling this though, is that also may have happened with other people that are going to be a part of the roast. So just be ready that maybe you are taking something someone else has been thinking of or found online. Unfortunately, a lot of the things you would find online are going to sound like a dad joke. And so you don't want it to look like you have no savvy or creative thinking yourself. For example, when I typed in, some good roast jokes on ChatGPT, it literally said, looks like your family doesn't have enough branches on the family tree. And it's like, okay, I don't know if that's going to get the right kind of response. So just be careful where you do research and think about who's writing the jokes for you. Next, it'd be practice makes perfect. Yeah, try it out with some of the friends, peers, or others that, are going to be roasting, and you guys can bounce ideas off each other. In fact, when I did an introduction of a speech where we roasted a person a little bit, me and my peer, we established that certain lines were ours, and what happened is as we were giving the lines, my peer accidentally said my line, and I just looked at him And I said, that was my line. And then that got the biggest laugh of the night. And so everyone knew that he had cheated and stole my line. And so that's a good way to do it, is to practice first, make sure that you know who's got what part, and then go for it. So some presentation tips I just give you. Having confidence when you stand up on that stage is very important. Obviously, if you sound too confident and are cocky, then people will turn on you. But if you're just confident and you're just grateful to be there, they'll appreciate that. Also consider your body language. You know, whether you're leaning on the podium and standing with your head back like this, or if you're leaning in, there's all kinds of different things. You can move your arms, you can walk around, you can do funny things, but most of the time our body language says so much more than our words itself. And then there's something very important called pacing. In comedy, pacing relies upon the ability to say, okay, I'm going this way, and then I'm going to stop and make a sharp turn that they weren't expecting. Or you do a pause and let the audience actually realize what you've just said, so then they get the joke. A lot of comedy is pacing and making it so that the audience catches up to you. Avoiding common pitfalls would be one of the most important parts of this video, I'd say. You don't, like I say, want to jump too far into degrading somebody or making them feel bad or putting them down. This is not a time or a place for it, even if everyone else on the stage is doing something similar to that. I would assume that since you're taking the time to research this, you want to do it at a high class, high level rate. And the people that do it intelligently, with compassion, but equally in a way that's a fun little, jab in the side, but not meant to be mean-spirited, that's what a good roaster does. I'd also say to be authentic. Be yourself. You don't need to put on some comedian that you watched on a roast. You need to just be yourself, talk to the audience, be your best self, use your signature moves. I talk about that in plenty of other videos on this channel if you want to check it out. And so I hope this has been a helpful video for you. I do hope you do a lot of research. I also hope that you'll commit to doing this at the highest level. Remember, a good speech, and a good roast especially, interjects humor. It evokes emotion. It ribs people for things that you just call back, that you've seen over and over again about them. But equally, it always ends up lifting. Don't end it in a way that makes them feel bad about themselves or says, I regret having that done. Always talk about uplifting them, and that is part of the promise. If this has been helpful, I hope that you'll like and subscribe. And thanks for joining me. Good luck at that roast.